Hello everyone and welcome back to Ian's Innovations. This is part 2 of the 3-part series Little Nightmares Who is the Runaway Kid. Before we resume this analyzation, let's quickly recap part 1. So in the first part of this series, I went over the first chapter, Secrets of the Maw, The Depths. In it, the runaway kid begins his escape from the Maw by venturing through the flooded and supposedly abandoned section of the vessel known as the Depths. While there, he encountered a withered old lady in the water called the Granny and ended up killing her. At the end of the chapter, the kid gets captured by a janitor and he drags him away while he's in a cage. Today in part 2, we'll be going over the second chapter of the runaway kid's adventure, The Hideaway, where we will see how the kid's story continues and what other questions from the main campaign get answered. So, let's begin with this analyzation. The chapter begins with those body bags on hooks being moved on a rail from the main campaign. Since last time we saw the runaway kid was when he got dragged away in a cage in that storage room from the lair chapter, it's safe to say that he is on the rail system right now since the janitor probably put him in a body bag and sent him down the rail. As the bag keeps moving forward, we see the runaway kid manage to get himself out of the bag. So either he managed to cut a hole within the bag or the bag already had a hole for him. Either way, he falls out of the bag and down to the ground on a pile of coal. You know, it's amazing that the kid survived that fall since we'd normally die like that if we were really skinny. Next we see 3 gnomes walk up to the runaway kid, and as soon as he regains consciousness, they run away like in the main campaign. Interestingly, this is our first time seeing gnomes in Secrets of the Maw since in the last chapter they didn't appear at all. So where in the Maw are we now exactly? Well, since we were previously on that hook on rail system that leads to the kitchen, we can assume that we are directly under that location and maybe even right next to the lair. The kid goes through 2 rooms with more coal, and when he approaches any gnome, they run away or hide. In the second room, he chases 3 gnomes that run through a small crack in the door, but one of them appears to be a little too fat to fit through. After the kid pulls the gnome out of the crack, he hugs the little creature as a sign of trust. Aww, that's kinda cute. So, with the gnome now trusting the runaway kid, it follows him wherever he goes, and the kid uses it to solve puzzles so that they can proceed through more rooms with coal. In those rooms, we see some interesting details. We first see this drawing of the janitor on the wall. Next, there's a strange drawing on another wall of 2 gnomes with 2 kids that are being looked over by an eye. Then, in a dark room, we see multiple of those drawings from the main campaign, and in this secret room where you can find a float sim, there are more of those drawings along with TVs with eye drawings on them. Who drew all these and placed all of these objects like this? And why is there a drawing of the janitor of all people in the Maw? Maybe we'll find out soon. After finding and befriending the other 2 gnomes from earlier, the kid along with his 3 gnome friends go into another room with a pile of coal and a hatch on the ceiling. So, why is all this coal here in every room? Well, they then enter a huge place with even more coal and a huge furnace. So yeah, we are in the engine room of the Maw. The 3 gnomes run up to another gnome at the furnace, and the 4 point to the switch for the runaway kid to flip it. And after he flips the switch, the furnace turns on and the gnomes run to pick up coal and begin tossing it into the furnace. This somehow lowers a ladder to the left and opens a door on the right. This engine room serves as our hub in this chapter, and we have the option of going either left or right first. We'll go left first because I always do that whenever I play The Hideaway, and I think that's where you're supposed to go first. When the runaway kid climbs to the above floor on the left, he enters a small room with some toys and even a few hanging dolls. Well, this is just disturbing, but hey, we are on the Maw after all. With nowhere else to go, he starts jumping on loose floorboards and falls through. And then we see the familiar face of the janitor walk into the room. So yeah, rather than introducing a new enemy like in the last DLC, they bring back the janitor, which I'm completely fine with. the kid follows the long-armed man into some kind of toy workshop, where we see him grab some toys and either repairs them or makes some new toy. So I guess this explains where all the toys on the mall come from, but this also raises more questions. Why is there a toy workshop right next to an engine room? Why is the janitor tasked in doing this? And how many tasks does he do on this vessel? Think about it. He patrols a prison, probably raises the kids in prison, and given that he's called the janitor, he may be cleaning up the messes on the mall. He has to capture the kids, deliver their bodies to the kitchen regardless of if they're dead or alive, as we saw with the runaway kid. We now know he has to make and repair the toys, and since he's the only adult we see so far in this chapter, I think it's likely that he is also responsible for supervising the gnomes to make sure they are keeping the engine running. You know, I bet the janitor must be pretty exhausted doing all this stuff at once. I mean, couldn't the lady have gotten at least one other person to do some of these tasks? One interesting detail in this workshop is this strange wooden gnome figure with an eye symbol. Now, this figure is used to get the in-game achievement Ashes in the Maw, but could there be more to why the janitor has this? Who knows? After the runaway kid escapes from the janitor's clutches by going down a garbage chute, he proceeds to help a gnome that was stuck in a glass jar, and two more gnomes in a coal pit. During this, we stumble upon an old observatory eye room similar to the one in the main campaign, where we can observe areas from the lair chapter, including the body bag room, the TV room with the crank, the room where Six will end up cutting the janitor's arms off, and lastly the kid witnesses Six herself traversing through the chute pit. So that means by this point, Six hasn't even gone through much of the lair yet. With the help of the three gnomes, the runaway kid pushes the heavy cart up some tracks and is able to proceed back to the engine room. He then lets down the gnomes with the hatch door from earlier and takes them to the furnace so that they can also fuel the engine. The runaway kid heads to the right and into a big room with a massive pile of coal. At this point, we should wonder, where and how the hell does the Maw get all this coal? I mean, we see this stuff everywhere in this chapter. I believe either the Maw gets coal delivered to them through other boats from the outside world, or what the gaming beaver theorized a while ago, which is that they may be collecting coal from the ocean floor with these nets seen on concept art from the Maw. I think I'd personally go with the former, since I looked up if coal can be found on the ocean floor and got nothing. The kid befriends two gnomes in the pile of coal and takes them to the furnace to fuel the engine. Next, he goes back to the right and climbs up a ladder into another room. In here, there is a small elevator that we can use to go up, but when we attempt to activate it, its batteries pop out. One of them is still fine, but the other one is completely drained of power. So in order to use the elevator, we of course must find a replacement, and the only accessible direction to go right now is that dark area to the right. The kid enters a dark, quiet hallway and steps on coal chips that make a chipping sound. Well, by the looks and sounds of this, something not good is gonna happen. And then we encounter none other than the janitor himself. Since he is blind, he takes advantage of the area being dark, and the kid must try not to make a sound while also trying to know where the long-armed man is. I'd easily consider this one of the creepiest moments in Little Nightmares. I believe the janitor's probably here for inspections and making sure everything in the engine room area is okay. Ironic given that he's blind. Also keep in mind that at this point in the Runaway Kid's story, the janitor still has his arms. That means Six has yet to completely go through the lair. Also, at this point, I had to ask myself, how does the janitor keep going back and forth to the lair and the engine room to catch Six and the Runaway Kid? What, does he use his long arms to get around faster? Actually, maybe. After getting past the janitor, the Runaway Kid goes through more rooms and soon makes it to the battery storage room, where he finds one fully charged battery for the elevator. Once he sneaks past the janitor and gets back to the elevator room by using the battery as a light source, he powers up the elevator and heads up. The kid makes it to a bathroom where we see 3 gnomes who quickly panic and run off to the right. When he also goes to the right, he ends up in some kind of filing/documenting room that reminds me of Ollivander's wand shop from Harry Potter. It's probably the cabinets, but that's just me. Anyway, when first going in here, I not only wonder what are these files about, but why would the mall include a mostly one toy workshop and a paper filing room right next to the engine room? You know, items that can easily get set on fire? So is the sole individual or multiple people constructing the mall idiots, or does the lady need space for other things? I don't know. This is just something that I keep wondering about. The Runaway Kid finds that 2 of the gnomes somehow managed to lock themselves in a filing cabinet and befriends the first one with ease, but had to run around to boxes to befriend the other one. He finds a third gnome on a table and it's drawing one of those pictures from before? Huh. So this whole time the gnomes have been the ones drawing the pictures that we've been seeing in the engine room area and the prison instead of the kids like we assumed before the hideaway was released. Kinda makes you wonder what's going on inside their little heads. With the help of the 3 gnomes, the Runaway Kid makes it back to the engine room and they also go and begin tossing more coal into the furnace. With all these gnomes keeping the fire going, bucket elevator in the back becomes fully functional and the kid uses it to rise up, finally making great progress in escaping the maw. After nearly getting thrown into an incinerator, the kid follows a couple gnomes that lead them into their hideaway, hence the name of the DLC. The hideaway has a single furnace, a bunch of junk laying around, and a lot of gnomes are here. This seems almost kinda peaceful. After everything we have seen and been through on the mall, this is a nice, relaxing breath of fresh air. Strangely, one gnome will keep following us in the hideaway, but the strangest detail in this place is that when light from the furnace and light from the Runaway Kid's flashlight shine onto any of the gnomes, they don't cast shadows that have gnomes, but rather, that have children. You know, I remember back when this DLC came out and fans first discovered this, everyone went crazy. The fact that we began to know a bit more on who or what the gnomes really are. Now, this stuff on the gnomes is further detailed in the 3rd DLC, but that will be in a later video. This detail only appears in the gnomes' hideaway, oddly enough, since every area in 6's campaign and in the other rooms in the engine room, they just cast shadows that have gnomes. So could this particular furnace room be some symbolic place where they can look back at what they once were? Well, that is one popular theory. The Runaway Kid bids farewell to gnomes as he heads right and goes on top of an elevator. And once it begins to ascend, we see the masked lady inside. As she looks up at us. And then the chapter ends. Well, this probably won't go well. We will find out what happens next in the Runaway Kid story when I'll cover The Residents, the 3rd and final chapter of Secrets of the Maw, and the last video of Little Nightmares, Who is the Runaway Kid. So, this was an interesting chapter. We learned how the mall is powered, what else the janitor does on this vessel, explored a new area of the mall, and of course, we got to learn a lot more on what the gnomes are. And trust me, this is only the beginning of what we'll learn about them. I remember when I first played the Hideaway and got to this cliffhanger ending, I was left with so many questions and was really eager to know what happened next. And soon, you'll find out what happens next in the next part of my 3-part series. Thanks for watching part 2 of Little Nightmares, Who is the Runaway Kid. Be sure to like and subscribe, and also be sure to watch part 3 whenever I upload it. Goodbye!